In 1968, Eunice Kennedy Shriver held the first Special Olympic Games, allowing those with disabilities to participate in competitive sports. Shriver started a movement that forever changed the way those with intellectual disabilities are treated. Eunice Kennedy Shriver was the fifth of 9 children born to Joseph P. Kennedy Sr. and his wife Rose Fitzgerald Kennedy. Shriver attended Stanford University and received a Bachelor's of Arts degree in sociology. After receiving her degree, Shriver went on to become a social worker in the Special War Division. She then moved on to the Women's Penitentiary in Alderson, West Virginia, where she was a social worker. In 1957, Shriver became Executive Vice President of the Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation. The Joseph P. Kennedy Jr. Foundation was established in honor of Eunice's oldest sibling, Joe, who was killed in World War II. The foundation's objectives were to seek the causes of intellectual disabilities and to improve the way that people with intellectual disabilities were treated. The foundation, under Eunice's direction, worked closely with the White House to improve the lives of people with disabilities. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy, Eunice's brother, established the President's Committee for People with Intellectual Disabilities, or the PCPID. The committee promoted policies and initiatives to support the independence and lifelong inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities within their communities. In Eunice's words, the PCPID's goal was to help ensure the right of a decent, dignified place in society for people with intellectual disabilities. Eunice's deep compassion for and dedication to those with intellectual disabilities came from a carefully hidden family secret. Eunice's older sister, Rosemary, was born with intellectual disabilities. The Kennedy family kept this a secret because at that time there was such a stigma and shame associated with having a child with special needs. Eunice saw the challenges her sister faced all in secrecy, and she wanted to make the world a better, more accepting place for people like her sister Rosemary. At age 18, Rosemary was at a 4th grade level, and she became increasingly frustrated and angry as she grew older. She was prone to fits of rage and began running away in the middle of the night. When Rosemary was 23, her father arranged for her to have a lobotomy. He didn't tell his wife Rose. The lobotomy was a disaster and left Rosemary with permanent speech and motor impairment. Her father, Joe, then sent her to live out her life hidden away in a Catholic institution in Wisconsin until she died in 2005. He never went to visit Rosemary. In Rosemary's eulogy, Eunice wrote that Rosemary left a legacy that was long and deep. Rosemary inspired many of her family members in the work that they had continued to do, specifically for people living with disabilities. In the meantime, Shriver's dedication and tireless work on behalf of those with disabilities continued, despite the fact that her family insisted Rosemary's situation be kept a secret. Rosemary inspired Eunice to start a day camp in 1962 in her backyard. The camp, called Camp Shriver, was for children and adults with intellectual and physical disabilities. Camp Shriver eventually evolved into the Special Olympics. Finally, in 1962, Shriver persuaded her family to go public with Rosemary's disabilities. Eunice wrote an article about her sister Rosemary that was published in the Saturday Evening Post. Times were changing.
The overall goal of the Special Olympics is to be a place where people with and without intellectual disabilities can play sport and interact together on a daily basis. The foundation of Special Olympics is inclusion, so we work for inclusion for individuals with intellectual disabilities in every component of life.
Let me win, but if I cannot win, let me be brave in the attempt. Let us begin the Olympics. This is a quote from Shriver, who would say this to her athletes before the Games. Shriver was very passionate about sports and equality within the disabled community. The first Games were held on July 20th, 1968 in the Chicago Soldier Field, the legendary sporting venue. Eunice opened the first ever Special Olympic Games, known as both the Chicago Special Olympics and the first International Special Olympic Games. There were around 1,000 athletes with and without intellectual disabilities competing in the first Games. coming from 26 U.S. states and Canada. The athletes competed in floor hockey, track and field, and swimming. During the games, if any athlete needs help in any competition, it is provided for those who require it. One of the goals of the Special Olympics is to help provide every athlete to reach his or her potential and goal. Today, people are shocked by the athletic talent the athletes in the Special Olympics have and the capability of athleticism they show. In the 1968 Games, it was the first time in history where people with and without intellectual disabilities were publicly rewarded and placed on a podium in recognition of their athletic abilities. While the high-profile press ignored the Games, it was one of the biggest highlights of Shriver's lifetime. Eunice was very proud of the event and did everything she could to make it a spectacular success. The Games were also able to be planned and ran smoothly because of volunteers in her team. After watching the Games in 1968, the mayor Richard Daley said to Shriver, "The world will never be the same after this." The Chicago Games in 1968 ensured united people with disabilities with so many others who were also searching for their basic civil rights, never mind freedom.
They cheer and they make signs and they do all of that. I think community at the state events themselves, you can just see athletes from different teams, athletes who live in northern Minnesota and southern Minnesota maybe see each other once a year at these events, and they're still super good friends and they have so much fun. They get excited, they cheer for each other, and so these events, it's really clear to see that Special Olympics is competitive and sports-based, but it's actually more of a family for a lot of athletes.
Within 226 programs in over 170 countries, there are over 4.4 million athletes with and without intellectual disabilities who participate in Special Olympics, with help from more than 1 million coaches and volunteers. Special Olympics works towards making children, adolescents, and adults with and without intellectual disabilities feel good about themselves and give them a chance to participate in something that makes them feel equal. There are 6 sport-based events that take place each year: winter, spring, summer, and fall, along with a flag football competition in October and a bowling competition in November. Aside from these large events, there are about 350 small local events going on each year.
Working with the Special Olympics is a very positive experience. The athletes are the greatest population to work with. They're always happy, they're always excited, they're always very genuine with being grateful for throwing events and hosting things and all the work that goes into it.
Today, the Games provide over 32 Olympic-style individual and team sports. The Special Olympics has such a strong impact on the families who participate. Special Olympics brought awareness to those with intellectual disabilities. Without that help, Rosa's Law would not have been passed. Rosa's Law removes the term mentally retarded and mental retardation from education and federal health. It replaces those terms with respectful language that makes them feel equal, such as intellectual disability, an individual with an intellectual disability. In 2009, the youth-led Spread the Word to End the Word launched by spreading to K-12 schools and universities all around the country, showing people how the term mentally retarded is politically incorrect. The Special Olympics made a large significance in history by continuing to make those individuals with intellectual disabilities feel good about themselves and have them realize they are equal to those without. At age 88, Eunice Kennedy Shriver died on August 11, 2009. The impact Shriver had on those with intellectual disabilities is indescribable. Her legacy will live out for many years and will be remembered for centuries. President Barack Obama said Shriver will be remembered as a champion for people with intellectual disabilities and as an extraordinary woman who, as much as anyone, taught our nation and our world that no physical or mental barrier can restrain the power.